With borders slowly opening up to international travelers, more and more people find themselves booking flights abroad. In this video, you'll see what it's like to fly to Paris on an Air France 787 Dreamliner in business class. Hello Jet Setters, I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. Right now I'm in Detroit. I'm about to board my first international flight in more than 18 months. I hope you'll join me. Cheers. Because this trip started in Detroit, I had a chance to check out the iconic light show inside the tunnel linking the concourses here.
You know, being back here in Detroit makes me think of two specific flights. Number one, the inaugural Delta A350 flight from here over to Tokyo. That was an amazing trip, and really the first time I experienced just what an amazing community can come out of YouTube. Number two is the last time I left the country. Also an A350 flight, a Delta flight over to Amsterdam. It was a super fast trip, as I recall, something like 5 hours. So it's nice to be back. It's just a bit different now.
Tonight's transatlantic flight will clock in at a more typical 7 hours and 7 minutes. We'll reach an altitude of 38,000 feet as we cross nearly 4,000 miles.
Speaking of that inaugural A350 flight, here's the gate.
Detroit does such a great job of highlighting live music. You gotta love that in an airport. My Air France business class ticket granted access to the Sky Club. The club here in Terminal A is quite nice. It's large and it's usually not too difficult to find a place to sit. As I've said before, having hot food back on the buffet here in Sky Clubs is really nice. In addition to the hot items, there are also cold ones. There are even snacks available throughout the club too. There are also drinks and even a bar. After a quick bite, I could barely stand not being down there in the action. So I headed back downstairs in order to check out the airplane for this first trip abroad in far too long.
Let's go check out our airplane. It's a pretty good looking Dreamliner, I think. Flying solo this trip, so kind of sorry to see this, knowing that the creative director is back there. She's got her own travels this week, but still gonna miss her. Our aircraft is due any time now, and I'm so excited to see it. This is the first time I've flown with Air France on a Dreamliner. I've flown on a number of their other aircraft, so pretty excited to see what it's like on board this one. Trying to get a video or even a picture of this airplane through this window is really hard because of what I like to call the dumb Detroit dots. Now, they serve an important purpose. They keep the temperature down in here, which reduces the cost to cool the space, and it's a big space, of course. So my pain and misery as a plane spotter is a small price to pay.
Thankfully, you were saved from seeing only endless dots by local plane spotter Blake Kasparian, who captured this stunning footage of my airplane landing after its flight in from Paris. Thanks so much, Blake. How beautiful is this Dreamliner? And only a few minutes after it touched down here in Detroit, it appeared at gate A56, where the inbound passengers got off and we prepared for our departure. With requirements for entry from any given country and to any other given country dependent on any number of factors and subject to change in any of a range of ways, even at the last minute, boarding is, in a word, chaotic. I'd recommend checking in at your international gate as early as possible to give yourself and gate agents sufficient time to check your paperwork.
Thought I'd check to make sure that everything's in order for the flight, so I'm gonna go check in, just make sure that I've got the paperwork set up. This is a new thing for me, so we'll check it out.
Our flight ended up being delayed to such an extent that I missed my connecting flight in Paris, and this was because it just took so long to check everyone's paperwork. Now, because this is an ever-changing and dynamic situation, please pack some patience. I saw several of my fellow passengers exhibiting, let's call it less than polite behavior in the face of the stress they were experiencing over all this. It's just not necessary and it's not helpful.
Turns out I need a brown sticker, which I'm going to get now.
How do you feel about international travel? Are you ready? Have you already made a trip, or are you still waiting? Leave me a comment below. That brown sticker was the proof I needed that my paperwork was acceptable for the final destination of my itinerary, Greece in my case. And once that was in place, I found my way on board the Dreamliner. As you'd expect of an Air France cabin, it's beautiful. It's understated and looks and feels quite comfortable. The seat is well designed and roomy. On the seat, I found a coat hanger, a blanket, and a pillow. The business class cabin was pretty empty, a factor which appeared to have zero impact on the excellent service I was about to experience. The light load meant plenty of space for my carry-on bag. The seat has a large in-flight entertainment screen. There's sufficient storage in front of my fairly full backpack. There's storage down here, too. The seat's adjustments are sufficient, and the fairly small tray table is accessible here. Inside the cupboard, you'll find a bottle of water, headphones, and more storage for all kinds of things. There's also a remote for the IFE. You'll find a reading light here, and sure enough, there's a universal plug down here, accompanied by a USB charger. Soon, a flight attendant brought the amenity kit around, which we'll open up once we're in the sky. And then he returned with a welcome glass of champagne. On his third visit, he brought a kit with hand sanitizer and a fresh mask before offering the evening's menu. Feel free to pause the video, check out greenergrass.com/menus, or I'll show the menu once again when we're in the air. In the end, we pushed back about 40 minutes late because of the delay in boarding. Again, I bet these kinds of boarding delays are going to continue as entry requirements continue to change. That being said, it's difficult to contain my excitement for this moment when we lifted off the ground. Even now, as I'm editing this footage, I'm getting excited about it. Once we were in the air, I checked out the IFE, which was robust and offered plenty of English language options. I was most impressed, of course, with the moving map. It would be important on this long overnight flight without many visual clues out the window. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi did not work on this flight. A flight attendant went to each passenger to profusely apologize for the inconvenience. The amenity kit was filled to the brim with plenty of the basics, including a toothbrush, which I think is one of the most important elements on one of these flights. I also like the microfiber cloth. It's a really nice keepsake of the flight. Another new element was a form to fill out with my information. Air France intended to use it to contact me in the event someone on board turned out to be sick. I never heard anything from them. Service began with a beverage cart and a single tray containing an appetizer, salad, cheese, and dessert. By far the most exciting thing on the tray was the lobster and prawn appetizer, which I was sorry not to try, but thanks to a newly developed shellfish allergy, I decided it was better to steer clear. In a few minutes, the appetizer and salad plates were removed and replaced with a main course, braised beef for me. Dinner was very good. And as a reminder, here's the menu. After I'd finished, I turned my seat into a bed, and the flight attendant insisted I try the whiskey and the port to finish my meal, and who was I to say no? The bed was comfortable enough to enjoy a solid 5 hours of sleep. It was roomy, but it came at the expense of exposure to the aisle. There's no door here, but again, I slept comfortably thanks to the roominess of the seat, not to mention the whiskey and the port. I woke up just off the coast of England. Once I shook off the sleep, I was greeted with a carb-heavy cold breakfast. We nearly immediately started our descent into Paris, which means it's time for the JebScore. For the uninitiated, this is a purely subjective and unscientific method I use to rate my flights. We'll look at 5 aspects of the trip and grade each on a 5-point scale. We'll consider the lounge, the seat, the food, the in-flight entertainment, and the service. First, the lounge. It's a solid Sky Club. Having access to the space was a welcome way to start my international journey, and I appreciated having a comfortable and quiet place to sit and even have access to some hot food. Unfortunately, the club does not offer much in the way of views, but I suppose I could have visited another club for that. This is worthy of 4 stars. Next, the seat. It was really nice and had everything you'd want for a flight of this length, or even longer for that matter. I do wish the tray table were bigger, and yeah, it's more exposed than some others, but it's still pretty private, and I'd rather have more space than a door, so this is a 4-star seat. The food was nice. It wasn't mind-blowing like I'd imagine food on a French carrier to be, but I guess that's why you fly La Premiere. Stand by for that video. It was pretty epic. That said, the food in business class was very nice, and perhaps best of all, unlike nearly every other airline, Air France has retained their pre-pandemic offerings. Breakfast wasn't great, but at least they offered it. 4 stars here. The in-flight entertainment was fine, with plenty of choices and a reliable, easy-to-use interface, an appropriately sized screen, and a solid moving map feature. This is worthy of 4 stars. The service. Holy cow. This is what I've missed. These flight attendants were all proactive, excited to be there, and seemed to truly love their jobs. This is what sets Air France apart for me. It felt so special to be served by people who, at least appeared, to be genuinely enjoying themselves. They were truly appreciative of everyone on board that airplane. This is one of the things I love most about air travel, and Air France delivered it in spades on this flight. 5 stars all day long. So that leaves the Air France Dreamliner service from Detroit to Paris with 21 out of 25 stars. I've had some pretty amazing domestic trips over the past year or so, but I was really itching to break out my passport. And while there were definitely more hoops to jump through than in the before times, and it was more stressful to make this trip, the experience was the perfect way to start my short journey abroad. Don't miss the next video in this series, Greener Grass Goes Greek, and stand by for that return trip on La Premiere. It might just have been my best flight yet.
Between now and the next time, see you in the sky.